Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
You've got some coffee, right? So let's try that again. Good morning.
Good morning.
Wow. His Excellency, Ambassador Albert Muchanga, Mrs. Kanayo, representative of the Nigerian Consulate, New York, representative of the South African Consulate in Chicago, elected officials, ladies and gentlemen, you've come from far and near. We also have press in the room, so I say hello. But permit me to say, Africa's time is now. I want to tell you a story of my own journey to making a commitment to Africa. I arrived in the US in 2004 to go in for my graduate program, Information Systems, out of Central Michigan University. A lot of us that arrive in this land, I say we're either running towards something or running away from something. For me, I was running towards something, higher aspirations, greater opportunities. I'm, top of my class. The sky is the limit. I was raised to believe I can do anything. So it was like, if America is what it is, it's the land of opportunity, my dad and my family was like, put you on the plane, that's where you're going. So I arrived in the US with that aspiration, go be the best. And I stayed that course, moved through the chain, got my degree. Right after, before I even graduated, I had 3 offers on the table. I had to pick. I picked one of the largest manufacturing firms, Whirlpool Corporation, was there for 7 years. Then it was time to pick again. And I picked the world's largest company, Walmart. I moved to the headquarters. And that opportunity exposed me to the global market like no other. So when I moved to Walmart, I thought it was for me, right? My personal aspirations, my paycheck, my house, my car, bigger pay, promotions, all of that. That was what I thought, living the American dream. The white picket fence, changing the house, changing all of that, I was living the dream. But something happened about 4 years ago. I lost my dad. So one thing I want to say is, as I continue with my story, I hope it would not take something that significant to make you do what really we need to do. But for me, right, it had to be that. So I got that call that we never want to get. But what also happened was 10 years had gone by since I left the continent that I hadn't been back. So remember that plane trip? I flew and I never looked back. I stayed connected. I visited. I didn't visit. They visited me. My parents did. My family, they're all over. We're like global company. Global family. So basically, I made that trip, and that trip is why we're here today. Because a couple of things happened. I was asked to write my father's autobiography. He worked for the government. He was an accountant. And I had to interview so many people to pull that biography together. And as I started interviewing, I was like, oh, this man rose through the ranks to the highest level. He stayed connected with his family, but what was most important was the impact he had in his community. So it wasn't what he had acquired for himself that people talked about when he passed. It was what he did for them. So part of this story is I see a lot of people, because the transition I've made is how can I use my skills, my talent, my network, my influence to add value to as much as possible? Because I came to a conclusion, if the rest of my life is about putting food on my own table only, really, I've already accomplished that. I can go get the best jobs in the world and put food on my table, but I felt it was going to be sad if I was going to use the rest of my life just for myself. So I came back to the US after that trip. While I was also on that trip, I saw a lot of young people on the road. Like, there was a time I wanted to take a passport for my picture. Like, 4 people attended to me. Like, somebody was like, welcome. Oh, cut this. And then somebody put it in an envelope. I was like, so much labor, so much labor. So I'm coming from a place where it takes 2.2 million people to run the world's largest company. $500 billion annual sales. So we need skills, we need, labor. So in my head was like, productivity, right? If you've got people and you can train them, human capital, that translates to productivity. So right there, I was like, Africa has all the right things that we do need. But what's the gap? So when I came back, I said, okay, I'm going to keep doing my job that I'm being paid for. But I'm sitting at the significant economic powerhouse. Let me start asking questions. What numbers are we doing with Africa? What are the challenges? And I had the opportunity to learn and grow for a couple of years. That inquiry also led me to talking with the head of Walmart to say, Africa. I became just consumed and literally probably obsessed with Africa. And at one point, I said, Nigeria's lost like $30 billion in oil revenue. How many people remember the oil crisis? If a company loses $30 billion in oil revenue, what happens? Done, okay? So I made a conversation to say, okay, I've studied and I've realized that in order to develop the economy of a region, you've got to attract investment, right? But you've got to be producing what the market is going to buy from you, the value addition. So I had that conversation, and then this is the question that rocked my world. The question was, okay, we've heard you. What does Africa want to sell? Okay? So I want you to hold that question. Because as business people, whether you're in the US or back home in Africa, what are you selling? What do you have to offer? Because if you don't have anything to offer, then it becomes charity, aid, people helping you, right? So why is Africa's narrative around people helping you versus what Africa has to offer the world? So for me, it was like, Africa is not about and out. Let's keep that aside. Let's elevate the dialogue on offerings that Africa has to offer the world, and the world messaging back to Africa that this is what we want to, transact with. So trade with Africa is about that. Commercial opportunities for you and I. It's not about you helping Africa or Africa helping you. It's about mutual opportunities that advances your goals and Africa's goals. So for this platform, our objective is to put Africa's agenda center stage. I attend, like you, many events where it's not designed around that. I also want to acknowledge that we have various stakeholders when it comes to the trade conversations. So what we've tried to do is to design a type of platform that envelopes and brings in the various stakeholders. Policy leaders on the African continent, policy leaders around the world, US, business makers on the African continent, business leaders on the US. And we also found that if you have a buyer and a seller of items, if the financing side is not in the room to make that transaction happen, you could shake hands and nothing moves. So for this year, we made sure that through the support of our main sponsor, Restaurant Coffee and Afro-Exim Bank, I actually want you to give them a round of applause. Well represented here. By Mrs. Kanayo Hawani, Managing Director, Intra-Africa Trade Initiative. I basically told her this morning, I know personally that she did not have to be here, but she made it a duty to be here. So this message is going out, we're also live streaming, so it's going around the world and we're capturing this because it's critical. The work that they do is absolutely important. We also have present the US Export-Import Bank. So as you're thinking of going and taking equipment to the continent, that's the bank that would really, really support you. Now, what I've also done is to look at it as a wheel. Everybody say a wheel. I believe that the more that we buy from Africa, the more that we sell to Africa. Okay? But we're going to sell different things. It looks different. We're going to sell energy, technology, right? Things that would power productivity on the continent. Okay? So what I'm going to leave you with is produce in Africa, and I got that phrase from His Excellency when we were having a chat yesterday, to say within the context of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, as the rest of the world has watched Africa emerge as the largest trade bloc in the world, people are asking, if that's for Africa, good for them, but what's in it for me? Okay? So what's in it for you is, don't just think of short-term strategy of exporting, actually think of a long-term strategy of producing on the continent that is one of the fastest growing regions in the world. The next top laptop buyers are in Africa. Produce it in Africa. The next cars, the next car buyers, the next billion car buyers, they're nowhere else but in Africa. Produce cars in Africa. That's the message. To say, under the Continental Free Trade Agreement, when you produce on the continent, you're going to be able to export within the continent free of duty, faster. As the African Union, they're going to share more about that. They're breaking down cross-border complexities in order to make sure goods and services and people move across the continent seamlessly. So it becomes a long-term strategy to say, for example, there are going to be more babies born on the continent of Africa. So if you're a producer of baby stuff, produce in, again, if you're a producer of baby stuff, produce where? In Africa. Awesome. Yes, that's really, I got that from His Excellency because I've been looking for a way to say what's in it for the rest of the world. So I'm not going to take too much time. I just want to also say one thing. There's also AGOA, right? AGOA is a US policy that has sat on the books for 19 years. And what it does is allows products coming out of Africa into the US market free of duty. Unfortunately, that information has stayed within the political space, and we are saying, as I'm sitting across the biggest buyers in the world, they're going, AGOA, okay, what's that? How do we use it? What does it mean? So we want to make sure that information, right, moves away from just a political conversation to a business conversation. And I want to share that those that have the pouch right there on their table, those products were actually imported duty-free into the US, clearing customs. We had to educate them a little bit, but that product was coming from Africa and duty-free, 0%. So it works. We just need to scale that up. The other thing that I want to leave you with is a lot of times when we are trying to buy more, again, buy more to sell more. That's my will. Buy more to sell more. As we're doing that, we also see that lack of information is key. Lack of education is key. Opportunities to network with like-minded people is key. So for us, we're thinking of ways to digitally keep you all connected. When we had this event last year, basically, after the event was like, fantastic, we've met great people. Is it going to be a year before we talk to them again? So what we've also done is like a social media type place where you can all connect. We want to grow that. We want to keep the conversation going daily. And if you need support or anything like that, we want to be a go-to resource for you. On that note, I'm going to pass it on to our guest of honor. I'm telling you, he chose us over a lot of places he could have been. And it's such an honor to have His Excellency, Ambassador Albert Muchanga, give us an address on the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. After that, we're going to also have a Q&A with him, and then we'll be presenting him with the Champion of Trade Award on behalf of the youth of the future to say what you've done, what you and your team have done, has laid a solid foundation for my generation and generations to come. And for that, we want to thank you. Please help me welcome His Excellency.